there's a variety of things that the U.S. has tried, and we're losing in the sport. It's like playing a football game, and instead of just trying to perform better and coming up with better plays and having better players and better strategies, we're instead rigging the game. We're trying to like undercut. We're trying to cheat. We're trying to go into their locker room and like slice the ankles of their players or something. I mean, it's like we're doing all these strange things. For years, the United States has used economic warfare against China in an attempt to prevent it from rising. The U.S. has restricted China, banning them from buying advanced chips, blacklisting their tech companies, and trying to cut them out of the global economy. Well, now China's using our own playbook against us. Surprise, surprise. Beijing just announced new rules. They said that if a product anywhere in the world contains even a trace of Chinese rare earth element, they get to decide whether it can be exported. So that means a company in South Korea or Germany, for example, would need China's approval just to ship a phone or a car part, even if it's not made in China. If it contains Chinese rare earth materials, it needs approval from them, period. Well, the problem is China controls the vast majority of the rare earth that is used in a variety of products. These are the rare earth metals that make up, for example, the guts of iPhones, electric cars, even refrigerators, a lot of our military products like fighter jets, pretty much everything that makes modern life possible. So if China can control the products that contain these metals, they can control the flow of tech and modern life around the world. That obviously includes us here in America. So President Trump then began threatening 100% tariffs if China doesn't back down, which, of course, could make things even more expensive. He also today signed a rare earth deal with Australia, but it really won't matter much since pretty much everything is manufactured outside of the U.S. and, of course, outside of Australia. And the new Chinese rule is on any export in the whole world containing rare earth materials from them, which is practically everything. So the question is, what exactly is our strategy with China? What is the goal? And is our strategy even a smart one? Joining us now is Sean Ryan. Sean is a patriotic American who's been living in China for most of the last 28 years. Sean Ryan is the founder of the China Market Research Group and the author of the book, The Split, Finding the Opportunities in China's Economy in the New World Order. Sean, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
It's great to be here, Kim. Thank you for having me. It's really important. I'm sitting here in Shanghai today that you and my fellow Americans really understand what's happening on the ground in China, what's happening between the U.S.-China trade war, because it's ratcheting up. And no matter what country, no matter what company, no matter where you live in the world, we all have to deal with the intended consequences and the unintended consequences of the trade war. In the United States, if you go to Walmart or Amazon, prices are sky high. Autos are now 50,000 US dollars on average. So inflation is a real problem. In China, deflation is a massive problem. Prices are coming down. So people aren't buying homes or big ticket items like cars because they think prices will be cheaper in the next month. So the world is under a very difficult time. And a large part of it, frankly, was started in 2018 by President Trump when he launched the trade war against China. Now, many of my fellow Americans have been listening to Trump and to Scotty Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, in the last couple of weeks, when they say, we're surprised. What were the Chinese doing? Why did they put rare earth export controls from China? This is going to hurt the United States. We're not going to be able to power our 7 trillion consumer electronic industry without Chinese rare earths. And they've acted surprised. But the truth, Kim, is that this is just a retaliation. This was just a response from China to the United States, who has been trying for really 7 years now under both President Trump and President Biden to contain China's economic growth, destabilize China's political system, and really stop China from being able to be a technological powerhouse. So you first had the bans on Huawei and other Chinese technology companies. But as you rightly pointed out in the opening, China, the biggest issue has been China has not been able to buy American semiconductors for years at the high end because President Trump has put on export controls on NVIDIA chips, on Qualcomm chips, on Intel chips that power AI and power the high end of technology today. So China is simply just retaliating. Now, why is this a problem? Because China basically has a stranglehold on the world's rare earths. The reality, though, is that actually rare earth itself, despite the name, is not that rare. You can get rare earth in Saudi Arabia, in Brazil, Russia, even the United States. The real issue is that China has a stranglehold on refining technology that refines rare earth. So China refines about 85% of the world's rare earth supply and about 98, 99% of the premium high technology level rare earth, which is needed to power a Ford F-150 pickup, which is needed to power an Apple iPhone, and most importantly, which is needed for our radar and our weapons to ensure our national security. So this is the issue that Americans are facing: high prices and an inability to buy key components because China is just, in my mind, even though I'm a red-blooded American, is retaliating to the provocations and bullying from the United States, not just over the last couple months, but over the last 7 to 8 years, Kim.
Yeah. I mean, I think what the root of the issue for America is the rising China. It's not just, it's the losing the grip on international power. China's a massive country, lots of people, 5 times the population. And if China rises up, I mean, China will absolutely become the dominant world power. I mean, and that's what I think the United States is afraid of and is trying to stranglehold China and trying to delay as much as possible China's rise. I think that's kind of at the root of all of this, right? It's not just, we could do a tit for tat about this, that, or the other, but the reality of it is it's just the U.S. is afraid of a rising China. And the U.S. has had a particular response to try to limit China from the trade war to muscling about. There's a variety of things that the U.S. has tried. I'm curious, though. I don't think this tactic is going to work. I think the U.S. is got the wrong mentality. I think that and I want to talk about this with you. I mean, I think that the best solution for the U.S. is to focus on the U.S. and to try to compete rather than viewing China as an aggressive adversary or a enemy. I mean, that's the problem that I have with the rhetoric, is turning China into an enemy when in reality, China is a competitor and we're losing in the sport. It's like playing a football game, and instead of just trying to perform better and coming up with better plays and having better players and better strategies, we're instead rigging the game. We're trying to undercut, we're trying to cheat, we're trying to go into their locker room and slice the ankles of their players or something. I mean, it's like we're doing all these strange things rather than just compete fair and square and try to be better. That would be, in my mind, the best strategy. But before we get into the strategy, tell us about, you're on the ground in China. I hear what people are saying here in the United States, obviously, which is we got to go after China and this is what we must do. And China's bad. China's this. What do people say about America in China? I mean, are they taking that same attitude of America bad, America, we got to undercut them? I mean, what is the rhetoric?
Well, that's a great question. Actually, most Chinese still love America, and they actually respect our political system. They respect our value system and morals, and they also like our idea of freedom. That's why when you look at it, so many Chinese, there are 300,000 Chinese students studying in the United States right now. They're not studying because they're all spies. They're studying because they want to learn from the American education system, get equipped with the right skills to either find good jobs in America or bring back technological and best of class know-how in the US and bring it back to China to implement and improve the Chinese system. So there's a rewriting of history by people like the CTO at Palantir, by a lot of politicians. And so they're attacking China and calling them, as you say, an adversary, when what we should do is be American first. Instead of trying to contain China's economic growth and technological ability, we should be investing in technology in the United States. We should be building rare earth refineries. We should be investing in manufacturing plants. We should outcompete China and do it fairly rather than trying to cut them in the Achilles tendon, as you mentioned, as if you were in a locker room. Now, the other thing, Kim, is all of these export controls are actually strengthening China. What do I mean? So Jensen Huang, the founder of NVIDIA last week, said that NVIDIA used to have a 95% market share in China, and now it's down to 0%. And he's losing $17 billion a year of revenue selling to the Chinese. China used to buy $350 billion a year of American semiconductors and other technology. Now what's happened? Because of the inability to buy American technology, China over the last 7 years has spent hundreds of billions of dollars building up a homegrown indigenous innovation. So now they have chips from companies like Huawei, Huahong, Cambricom that aren't quite yet as good as that in the United States, but it's close enough. And I can guarantee you in the next 3 to 5 years, they'll catch up to America. If the Americans can make something, if the Japanese can make something, then certainly the Chinese can too. We're shooting ourselves in the foot. We need to take an American first attitude, build in America, outcompete China, not try to hurt them unfairly, because it's just going to bounce back and hurt us in the foot.
Yeah, I mean, the strategy of cutting them off and trying to isolate them, like you said, is completely backfired. I mean, the intent of it was, well, if we isolate them, they can't grow, right? I mean, that's the idea. That's the basic idea. But instead, they said, oh, well, then I guess we have to rely on ourselves. and then once they rely on themselves, I mean, then if they don't need anybody else, then they just grow and grow and grow. And then there's no way to stop it at all. But really, should we even stop it? There's no way to, it doesn't even matter if we come to a conclusion of, yes, we should stop it. We need to stop China. You can't. So if you can't, then live with it. You can't stop China. So what do we do now? So let's talk about the America First attitude. What should be done, what America should do in response to all of this. I mean, obviously we should be relying on ourselves more, building more in America. Is China afraid of that, do you think?
I don't think China's afraid of it. I think they understand that it makes sense for America to build up its own technology. And frankly, China has been de-risking from the United States over the last 7 years. I'll give you some numbers. In 2017, 17% of China's exports went to the United States. That number is down to only about 12%. So it only accounts for about 2.5% of China's GDP, which is why when Scotty Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, says that America has the upper hand in the trade war against China, he's either deluded or he's getting misinformation from his colleagues, because China now is selling 18% of their exports to ASEAN. When you go to, say, Singapore, BYD, a Chinese automaker, has replaced BMW and Toyota as the largest seller of autos in that country. I was just in Saudi Arabia, and you see Alibaba and Huawei, which are major technology companies, that you have their buildings all over Saudi Arabia. So what's happened is China has become the major mover for technology in the global south, or I like to call it the global majority. And here's the thing. Because of what the United States did by weaponizing SWIFT, weaponizing the US dollar, weaponizing technology, and confiscating assets, not just from China, but also from Russia, that has scared the global majority. A lot of other countries now just don't trust the United States. So they want to buy technology from China. Let me give you an example. Malaysia spent $5 billion US trying to build up data centers. But in his last week in office, President Biden has banned the export of NVIDIA high-end chips to Malaysia, putting a kebab in their multi-year plan to become a data house center. So it's not just China. And a lot of my American friends and fellow Americans don't realize that the world is shifting towards China's orbit. America cannot keep China down. China is the largest trade partner of 130 nations. There are only about 180, 190 in the world. So how can America be so arrogant to think that they can or should contain China? Instead, we need to be building up our own drone industry in the United States. We need to be building up our own pharmaceutical sector in the United States. 95% of ibuprofen and antibiotics come from China at some point. So it's important that we build and secure access in America, not because China's evil. I love China. Not because China is an adversary, not because China is about to invade the US and threaten our way of life. I think that's just fear-mongering. I don't think China has any interest in implementing a communist political system in America. But we do need to compete fairly, which will create scales of economy, lower prices for Americans, and more innovation. We need to do things the right way, the way that America maybe didn't always do in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, but at least we aspire to doing things the right way. Free markets, fair competition, not bullying of other countries. Sometimes people call me an apologist for China or a shill for China. I'm not. I think I'm fairly neutral. I love the United States. I think I'm a China realist. I'm saying that China is rising because it is. It's telling the truth. China is going to become innovative. It is. It's the truth. And I think that too many in the United States are not willing to listen to people like me who are on the ground, who do love America, but want to be fair and balanced in how we approach what's happening in China.
Yeah, I get called a China shill all the time too. I always have to point out, you realize I'm Vietnamese, right? And like Vietnam and China don't have the best relationship. But that being said, one of the issues that we have with our trade war with China, or with just this mongering against China year after year, decade after decade, is that politicians are just thinking about the now, because they don't have to think about tomorrow, because they're only short term. They're elected for 2 years or 4 years or 6 years at max. So they're not thinking ahead and planning ahead the way that China is able to strategize. They're thinking, oh, I got to appear strong to my constituents. I have to appear strong on the news program. So we're going to fearmonger against China. We're going to put tariffs on China. We're going to put sanctions on China. We're going to do all these things against China. And they're not thinking of the long-term strategy, and how that long-term strategy will backfire, as we've discussed. China then saying, all right, then I guess we'll innovate on our own. All right, then, I guess we'll be doing all, we're going to go and make friends with the global majority. All right, then, we're going to go and do all of these other things. Our politicians aren't thinking long-term because of the type of political system that we have, which obviously this is the big glaring negative of our political system, is that constant short-term thinking. America can't get ahead when we're thinking in 4-year increments, and only in 4-year increments. And then the next guy comes in and changes everything suddenly and says, do away with everything the last guy did the last 4 years, and we're going to change it. And I mean, what we saw with Trump and then Biden and back to Trump was, for every 4 years, throwing everything in the garbage and then restarting. And that strategy is obviously failing the country. I mean, the numbers don't lie.